And good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depending on when you are watching this episode. We are live. This is Marion Spears Carr, and this is the Healthcare Leadership Show with Marion Spears Carr here on LinkedIn. A show I started 3 years ago and up to 140 episodes now. But excited to be here on a special day, which is Wednesday, talking to my friend and just an incredible gentleman, Scott Becker. He's the publisher of Becker's Healthcare. He's one of the top, if not the top, healthcare attorneys. But I guess he is probably the top. He's an author. He's a keynote speaker. He's just so much to the healthcare industry and the industry at large. Scott, welcome to the show, man. I'm so glad to get you back on the show because I want to know what you've learned in the launch of your book. How are you doing, Scott?
Great, Marion. And thank you so much for having me. And always a pleasure to visit with you. You're the very best, one of the most supportive, best people out there. So for me, it's a pleasure to visit with you. And thank you so much for having me. By background, yes, I'm a healthcare attorney, then the founder, publisher of Becker's Healthcare, and then a handful of other business types of initiatives and not-for-profit boards that I work with and so forth. So it's just a pleasure to visit with you. And thank you so much for having me.
Glad to have you. And back in January, we had you on the show when we were talking about the pre-launch of your most recent book called Building Great Businesses. And we got that was a fun conversation, and we had such a good time. And when we got, we were helping to get your book launched. Obviously, you have all these different people supporting you. It's been this massive effort, a grassroots effort. And by the way, if you're watching this show live or watch the replay, let us know in the comments now or when you do that you're there. We want to know who's watching the show, where you're watching from. And in a moment, I'll give you a chance to ask Scott questions about what's going on. But I got to read I had the opportunity, you helped me to gave me an opportunity to do the pre-read of the book and got to really dig deep on the book with our discussion. But I've been following all the stuff you've been doing to get this book launched, all the feedback, everyone posting pictures of their book, their copy, in all kinds of different environments. I think I saw somebody had climbed a mountain somewhere and they had your book. That was pretty amazing. But Scott, talk to us a little bit, I guess, bring us up to date.
Sure.
What's happened with the book, how that's going. And then let's just talk about what are some of the things you've learned about this during this process?
Yeah, no, so many things. And so it's a great subject, and I'm so pleased that you'll have me on and so forth. The first thing I'll say is that when you start a project like this, one, everything's a team effort. And you might think differently. Oh, you're writing a book, how's it a team effort? But the reality of it is there's two things that I'll sort of point out right away. There are people early on that when you tell them you're doing this, that they immediately step up and are sort of, how can I help? And that to me is amazing. And two of them that come to mind right away are yourself, Marion Spears Carr, as well as a woman I work really closely with on the conference side, Michelle Byers. But just from the really early get-go, I said, I'm doing this. And rather than asking why, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Essentially, there's a couple of people that step up right away and are like, how can I help? And that to me is so encouraging and so supportive. And it's just so nice. It's so positive. We always say in life, don't listen to the naysayers. But it's so nice when you see sort of people out of the sort of like, that like you're close colleagues with, you've known for years, not necessarily best friends with, but people that step up and are so supportive. So you sort of see that, and it's incredibly positive. The second thing, again, we're trying to make, this, a lot of people have a specific purpose in writing a book. Me, I'm constantly trying to figure out. I really enjoy writing. I really enjoy the challenge in the process. Then you try and come up with goals. Am I trying to build myself into more of a business thought leader? Am I trying to do more speaking? My speaking calendar is very full as it is, but am I trying to sort of, think and cause myself to think deeper? There's a lot of different motives in writing a book, and you're sort of always sort of straddling through those and trying to figure those out. So that's sort of another lesson to it. Like, some people come to it with a very specific purpose. I am trying to do this with that. For me, it's much more of an iterative effort, an incremental effort. I'd written earlier books. I didn't like how one of them came out. I really wanted to improve this. And so you learn that sort of what, trying to figure out what are your purpose and vision for the book, other than you love to write, which I love to write. The third thing I'll tell you is all these things, I think we sold in the pre-order phase 10 to 12,000 books. And for anybody that's published a book, that's a lot. It's obviously not a lot compared to a major author. But to sell 10 to 12,000 books, I could do as many of these things as I want, but it really doesn't happen without a team effort and the couple people that work with me that are really working very directly with people. Hey, can you buy a book? Would you buy a book? We hope you'll like the book, stuff like that. It doesn't happen without a very sort of team effort. So I'd say the first three lessons are people show up that are incredibly supportive, people like yourself, Michelle Byers, some others. It takes a team effort to really get a book distributed. Third, you're constantly trying to figure out your own why in writing the book, other than the fact that I actually love to write and didn't like an earlier version I did and wanted to greatly improve it. So those are a few of the lessons that I learned. And I'll stop for a second, and then I've got a few more lessons I learned, or things that observations that I have that come out of this that hopefully are informative for readers or that they find interesting, or listeners.
Yeah, I love that, and I think there's so many people within my circle, with my network, and with your network that want to write books, that want to share their knowledge with whatever industry they're in. And I think, to your point, figuring out what your primary goal is and then drive around that, and people buy into when you share like you do all the time, people buy into that. Like, that's such an amazing thing. And you were so far ahead of the curve on being a thought leader to drive business, right? That's what a lot of the book is about, is how you built your business by positioning yourself as a thought leader in your space. So I love that you're sharing with kind of what your drivers were. What surprised you? And I want you to go to your list, but what's been the most surprising thing about this process, or things that have happened while you've launched the book? I'd be curious about that as well.
Yeah, no, I would say that, I would say that it's surprising, not surprising, I'm not sure. I think the things that are surprising are, one is the amount of effort it takes to write a book and get it from point A to point B in the way that you want it written. So this is a book where I sat down, wrote 3 hours a day for 90 days last summer. And it was a really healthy exercise for me. But the amount of concentration and the amount of focus I had to take, that I haven't taken that type of longer form focus in a long time. So that sort of effort to actually dig in and actually write a book, I'm not a dawdler, so we got it done in 3-4 months. But then it takes months and months after that to get through the presses, to get through the printers, to get through everything else. So that's sort of one. The second surprise I would say is, we made this very specific effort to try and make the USA Today bestseller list, the New York Times bestseller list, those kinds of things. And it's a pervasive effort. It's not a cheap effort. And sort of, I guess the next thing I would say is that if I would have known then what I know now, how hard it is to make the New York Times bestseller list, which we did not make. We made the USA Today bestsellers list as not so much a first-time author, but there's only 15 books a week that make the New York Times bestseller list. We sold more books in that week than 7 out of 10 of those, but it doesn't really matter, because the people that make it are such huge names, especially in the nonfiction area. So Dave Portnoy, the founder of Barstool Sports, just came out as a #1 bestseller, but he starts with a completely different level of platform and media support and stuff like that. So you sort of learn, pretty quickly how hard it is to actually make certain lists, no matter how much effort you put in. And if you were trying to make that list, how you would adjust next time to make that list. It's probably much more massaging and kissing up to the New York Times than just selling lots of books. It's probably both. And really fascinating thing. I love or hate the New York Times, they're still the standard bearer for best-selling books. So that's sort of another surprise. The amount of, not necessarily surprising, the amount of effort it took in to write it, to like it, but also the effort to make the New York Times list, which we failed at, but it is what it is. You learn greatly while failing. The third thing I would say is, the peace of mind concept of, and we did a discussion, never perfect, always trying, and it's okay. And the concept being, you work really hard at something, And I'm a huge fan of putting a lot of effort into something and being the person in the arena versus a critic. And so no matter how hard you work at things, there's going to be things that are a little bit disappointing. Here there was in the first release of the book, there was a typo on the spine, the side of the book. And we're working with a really highly qualified publisher and printer and stuff like that. And it is what it is. And at some point you got to say, like, it is what it is. We're looking to do a different book on healthcare next year. So we can't, you sort of like play through and life goes on, so we think of this concept of never perfect, always trying it. It's okay. The other thing I would say is the last couple books I wrote that were business books got such limited distribution that it didn't really matter if people like them or not. You follow me? I mean, it's sort of like the first one we did years and years and years ago. I'd written a number of healthcare legal books, healthcare business books, and those were really professionally done with professional publishers, all those kinds of things. The next stage, I started to write business books several years ago. The first business book, and I've told you this before, it came out so poorly that when it came to me, and there was a whole story in it, during the period of doing the deal of writing it, the publisher went broke. We had to hustle and get it published by somebody else. And it just didn't reflect well. It was something like, we got it, it was done, but I couldn't send it to anybody because it didn't reflect well on us. The second book was an improvement, but then at some point after writing the second book, I went out and got professional guidance on it and rewrote this third book, which is the book that's in front of us, Building Great Business, that we released now. This book, as opposed to the other two, the other books had quite limited distribution. I would say that most of the books that got out there to people were got out free or really low price. This book was bought by 10, 11,000 people. And, of the 10, 11,000 people, there's this whole game as to how that works. A lot of those are bulk sales where I'm speaking at conferences and so forth. There's not, there's a lot of discounting. There's a lot of investing by myself in that. There's a lot of people that we bought the book for saying, buy the book, we'll give you a gift card for it. So there's a lot of different ways that you get that. You're never going to make money in this type of project unless you're one of these major authors. This is a money losing project, but that's okay. But I think what happened here was when you actually get the book into 10 to 12,000 people's hands, you do have this issue of making sure that people actually like the book, and so it's been very, very rewarding that people have ultimately been pleased with the book and they've gotten good reviews, because you're always a little embarrassed. The last two books, I wrote them, probably very few people read them. So whether they were good or bad, it didn't matter. This book, 10, 12,000 people got it. Some portion of that read it. And I've been pleased that it's not been, that people have generally liked it. That's not been, the reviews on it are good, that it's not like people are like, oh my God, this is the ego trip for Scott, or oh my God, this is horrible. The reviews have been really positive, really nice. And that's very encouraging. That's very encouraging, and we talk about supportive people. Obviously I am so thankful to our team that helped distribute the book. I'm so thankful to people like you that helped me sort of amplify the book. I'm so thankful to everybody that bought the book. And then I'm really thankful at another level to people that spent the few hours to read the book, because in today's world, the most precious commodity is time. And so people that actually spent the 2-3 hours, the 4 hours to read the book, it's not a long book. It's 200 pages. It's relatively, we try to make it quite easy to read. But that to me is probably the biggest blessing of all, that people invest their time in reading it. And then many of them have written really nice reviews about it. But the fact that they actually took the time to read it, like, I don't think I can get my sister or one of my kids to read it. So the fact that so many other people read it, you really appreciate that they actually dug in and read it. And that's incredibly satisfying that people, spend the time to read it, which is just really, really nice.
Yeah, you and I talked about this in January, and we've talked about it since then too, is that one of the things about your book that stands out to me, and I did read it. I got to read it ahead of time, and it is an easy read, but it is but there's things from it that you gain and you can put to practice. I've said this before. I read a lot of books. I buy a lot of books is probably more appropriate, because about halfway through a book, if it hasn't given me a call to action, or prompt me to change something or try something or add something to what I'm doing, that book, I'm done. I'm kind of done with it. Your book shares your story, but there's so many lessons in the book that you can apply. Like the story of how you found Molly, and she kept with the book, gives us some insights on how you focused on being surrounded by the right people and how critically that is for people to be successful. I think we get lost in the world of leadership, not just healthcare, around finding people with certain skills, certain capabilities, certain backgrounds, etc. And we've missed out on working with people, getting people in our circle, getting people in our teams that fit with us because of who they are. And that's one of the things that came out of the book for me, is like, you focused on obviously the problems to be solved, but the people first. And to me, that's a lesson learned that people need to read the book for. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I think that's kind of off what we were planning on talking about, but I think it speaks to why that reading this book is valuable.
No, I think that's, what I have been in a bunch of different businesses. When I've succeeded, I've made the team to recruit and build great teams. When I've not succeeded, I've half-assed it in building and recruiting great teams, either because I didn't have the energy, didn't want to spend the money, didn't want to have the focus on it. Because as you build a team, especially as you're really getting going, you build a team, you have to manage that team. And that's a lot of, aside from money, it's a lot of personal effort and extent. And what I found in business, every single business I've been in, is when we build a great team, or when I'm on the board of a company that builds a great team, or I watch somebody else who's built a great team, they ultimately can do great. If they skip that step of building a great team around them, of some great performers, they're very limited in their ability to be successful. It doesn't mean you can't have a one-man wrecking crew, a one-woman wrecking crew, where you run a business that provides you a job and you make a living. But if you want to do greater, bigger things, it almost always requires a team. And from my own personal perspective, it's binary. Built a team we've done successfully, not built a team we failed, and not failed, but dawdled along and not really made as much of something as we could. So we find it fascinating. And so, like, the book, one of the beauties of the book is, and I like the book before this, I had gone out and got some professional criticism, professional review of it. And that was this book, the book right before it. This is the book that was not a D, but maybe a C or B minus or something like that in terms of my own rating of it. What we did, that book had all the business advice, all the ideas, all the thoughts. What it didn't have was the weaving together of the stories with the book to make it more rich and more colorful and more real. And when I got professional advice, and I had a colleague give me advice, they basically said, look, you really got to find a way to weave in the story of it if you want it to be great. And so this next iteration, which is this building great businesses, again, you buy them on Amazon. If you want bulk orders, find me, whatever. But the idea was that we were able to then weave in the real story together with the ideas and the business concepts to make it much more readable, much more colorful. And hopefully a much more richer read for people. And that was the advice we got. And I think that was good advice. And I think it made the book much better, and as we work on things, there's this great concept of storytelling. I've never been a big, one of these people that's like, everything's got to be wrapped in a story. But in terms of writing a book, the advice that I got on that was quite right, I believe, that, wrapping it together with the story of it makes it much more readable and maybe more memorable for people than just the platitudes, the business concepts, the ideas that we had in the book before it.
Yeah, I would agree that was great advice you got, because that book does have that story. It does have that connection to the human nature, humanity of the people that you work with, the people that you've dealt with. But then it also does cut to the chase on, these are the things you got to do as a leader. These are things, if you want to be successful in a business, if you want to build a great team, build a business, etc. And I think, when I first started reading the book and we first started talking about you coming on the show, my first thought was okay, this book is around your entrepreneurship, but there's so much in this book for people who are leaders who don't really have aspirations of starting their own company. They're leaders of companies that are already established, but there's so many things in this book that you can apply to that. Any feedback you've gotten from your readership that says, hey, I'm not really an entrepreneur, I'm not starting a company, but there's some things that your book has shared with me that I can apply to what I'm doing. I'm curious if you've gotten that kind of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people are not. Well, you're a founder and entrepreneur. Most
Yeah.
people are not. But most people are business leaders of some sort, even if in their own role. They've got a job
Yeah.
and they're a leader. Most of us are doing both. We're doers and we're
Mhm.
managers. We're working with people. We're doing something. And yeah, we've gotten tremendously positive feedback from people both that are entrepreneurs and founders, as well as people that are business
Mhm.
leaders or in business or of any sort. And somebody said they're sharing 20 even with their sales team. We've been booked for a lot of talks where people want to talk about it, not necessarily to a group of founders or CEOs, but to people that are very involved in building businesses and thoughts around them and so forth. We spoke recently to a group of minority entrepreneurs in the city of Chicago, and that was a great pleasure. And most of these people are entrepreneurs, but many of them have a job too. They're both.
Yeah, I love that. And I've been very transparent on why I'm a founder, Scott. I'm a founder because every time I've tried to be an employee, I was not very good at it. I'm just, I'm just going to be real honest. I'm not a really good employee. So I had to be a founder to be successful. Not that I wasn't successful as part of other companies' teams. I did that for several years as well. But my founder drive has also realized that, that's the cloth. I'm cut out of from a different piece of cloth. So that was the way. And there were things in your book that were really, really valuable. What's a question you've been asked about the book that kind of took you aback? Like when somebody just randomly came up to you, and we didn't prep for this, so you may not have an answer,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious because you're so approachable, Scott. Ultimately, you're like one of the most approachable people I've ever seen. And I've seen you, we've known each other, 11 years now at conferences, and I see how you are so accommodating of people approaching you and talking with you. But what's a question somebody has asked you about the book that just like, oh wow, that I didn't even think about that, or it took you aback?
I think that the questions that the you know the questions that I get are more right now are people really asking me what they should do in their business, what they
Uh,
should do, what niche they should go after, or they're struggling with this problem, or they've got that issue. And it doesn't take me aback, but it depends on so much of this is, it's almost like being a therapist or a coach or something of that sort, in that
yeah.
you don't have the answers for people, but you could at least sometimes help them think through the answers and so forth. And these are not things, I'm not a business coach. I'm not interested in being a business coach at all.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I like speaking, I like writing, I've got businesses. Like I don't, but like sat down a couple days ago with emerging leaders at a company, happened to be very close to the company. They'd asked to sit down with me to get some business advice, and I can't tell them what to do. I give them some ideas, but they have to know their own business. And I was so impressed with these people because young people in the company knew exactly, here's the top 10 customers of the company. Here's where we make money. Here's what we do for this customer. Here's what we do for that customer. Here's what we don't do for that customer. And I was so impressed with it. And then using that as a vehicle to say, okay, if these are your top 10 customers, rather than looking at customer 33, let's double
Mhm.
down on these 10, double down on those relationships, and figure out if there's patterns in how you attract those customers and what you do for those customers, and we do more of that. You follow me? So I
Oh,
found
absolutely.
that I find more, the amount of people that one want to book a call and talk for a few minutes about things, but two, the amount of people that have some sort of entrepreneurial inkling that are trying to figure things out,
Mhm.
and we're a huge believer. I don't want to get into a whole patriotic dialogue or
Yeah.
US dialogue, but I am a huge believer that that ability to have your own business is one of the great defenses for democracy, for capitalism, for everything. If people feel like
Mhm.
they can't have their own business, that it's not possible for them, that they can't make a living without working for a big company. They can't get into a big company,
Mhm.
whatever it is, then we got a really bad situation. So we're a
Yep.
huge believer, and we're encouraged by all these people that are entrepreneurially trying to start businesses in businesses and so forth, and trying to help them, move in the right direction. I mean, we actually love that, and not always easy, but we love that, and trying to encourage that type of opportunity, and people seeking that type of opportunity.
I believe, and I'm with you on that. I'm with you on your beliefs that how that supports our life as a democracy, and that entrepreneurial spirit is what founded. Let's face it, it's what founded this country, in my opinion. And here's the thing: I started my newest business just recently at age 60. How old am I now? I'll be 64 soon. So 62, I started this new company at 62. There are more tools available for people wanting to start companies now than there's ever been. Like, I
Yes.
mean, right. Like the price of entry is a lot less than it was even 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I just think that's huge for a lot of people. So I think I would encourage people. I had a conversation with someone today, one of my colleagues today, about the work that they're doing, and I said, right now you have access. You have this person has a pretty big network. I said, there's money in your network right now. There's a problem that you could solve for the people in your network. The fact that you already have that is the beginning of your business. Like, that's the start of your business. You already have that circle, so anyway, to your point, I do want to give a shout out to Kawiyu. I can't pronounce his name, but he's checking in from Nigeria. Thank you for checking in. It's glad to have you in the audience. We only have 2 more minutes, and I know you got to go to another. And Barack is checking in from Istanbul. Man, what is this? Like International Day, Scott? Look at all these people you're bringing in from all
God
over around the
bless you.
world.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you.
Yeah. And Jamie Becker says, "Way to go, bro." I'm assuming that's what that
That's
means. I'm
actually my
hoping.
sister, literally.
Oh,
Literally my
okay.
sister. God bless
Oh,
her.
that's your sister. Thank you,
It
Jamie.
is. Yeah, she's in Atlanta and the best of the best. So God bless her. As good as they come.
Well,
The very
Jamie,
best. Just make sure her kids are behaving themselves today, and her husband too. I'll check in afterwards, Mary, to make sure.
that'll be good. Jamie, I am right up the road from you in North Georgia, up in the mountains. So we're an Atlanta-based group. So thank you for being in the audience, and so glad to have family supporting you, Scott. Jamie, thanks for being here. I'm in Jasper, Georgia, or in the mountains near Jasper. Last comment, Scott. Last question. You've got a new book going to come out next year on leadership in the healthcare space. Is my understanding what you said earlier? What have you learned? What have you learned from this book that you're going to apply to that process? And then we're going to wrap up because I know you got to get on to another show.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think we'll probably work with the same publisher we worked with on this last one, and distributed through Simon and Schuster. That no matter how great a publisher you work with and how good they are, and they are fantastic, there are always challenges, there are always issues, and it is what it is. But we ultimately had a really, really nice experience with them. And then we'll try to figure out, what our distribution effort will be, and what we're going to try and do, what we're going to try and accomplish with it. And part of the effort is that'll be on healthcare trends and thoughts and issues. And a lot of it is just, I enjoy the process of writing, of sitting down and writing. You and I are both very, very social people. We're out a lot. We're talking to a lot of people. For me, it's very grounding to actually sit down and write and think, to combine that with what I
Yep.
do. Like you combine a lot of your systematic thinking, and I just sort of need that. So I enjoy it. And we'll try and we're trying, again, we always look at this concept that we're working with now, which is never perfect, always trying, and it is what it is, and it's okay. So we'll keep on trying to get better, and keep on working at hopefully people will receive this book well, they'll enjoy it, and hopefully they'll, the next one we get out, I don't have a timeline on it exactly. We'll try and get it done by the end of the year, and then to the printer, the publisher, and start working with them. So it won't be till mid next year, I'm sure, at best. But we'll try and work on that as well. And it's it's largely a labor of love. I mean, it really is. It's
Yeah.
But my shout out today goes to my sister, Jamie Becker, who showed up on this. God bless her. Thank you so
Hey,
much.
yeah, Jamie, thank you for being with us. And it's so glad to know. I didn't realize she was right down the road from us. So that's good. That's awesome that she's in Georgia. Scott, I'm gonna let you go to your next thing. Thank you for being on the show.
Marion, the only
Looking
thing I
forward
will
to
tell you
supporting
is,
brother.
I appreciate your support so much. The only thing I'll tell you that I'll add on about my younger sister is she spends a tremendous amount of time rock climbing and mountain climbing. And I am not sure where in the family genetics that came from, because she's the most adventurous of the three siblings by far, but
Oh,
simply
wow.
remarkable person. So God bless her.
Glad to have her in the audience and glad to have her here. And an absolute pleasure, Scott. Thank you. I'll let you go. If you're watching the show for the first time, this is the Healthcare Leadership Show. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's always just a total pleasure to visit with you. I can't tell you how much I enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Care.
Scott's going to drop off, but go to Amazon. If you haven't bought the book, you can get it on audio now. It's Building Great Businesses. Order it now. You can get it there.
Or bother me, Marion, and people can get it at a discount if they buy a bunch of them. So I'll send you my text number in the chat. I don't know if anybody is still on it now, but there's the text number, I think. And feel free to text me. Would love to get people bulk orders. We'll discount it a bunch. We'll try and get them to you. But Marion, thank you so much. You're the best of the best.
All right. And I'll add it up. That's our show. We'll have a great, and I'll put it in the comments. Everyone have a great day. And I'll put your text in the number in the chat. Have a great day, guys. This is Marion Spears Carr. This is the Healthcare Leadership Show, my LinkedIn Live show that we do every week with thought leaders like Scott and other healthcare leaders across the industry segments. Have a great day.